Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Gino Parati. I am the founder, lead educator, coach, and mentor with Right Brain Journeys. And welcome to my monthly LinkedIn Live learning session. I'm on just a minute early here just to test the technology. I'm going to check to see if we're broadcasting live. It says we are, so it seems to be working. Last month, I had a little bit of a technology issue where it was not broadcasting to LinkedIn. So like I said, on just a minute early here to test it, make sure that it's working. Our lesson today is going to be on how to give and receive constructive feedback. So I'll get into that with our agenda for today in just a moment. Okay, yay, it's working today. Okay. So our agenda for today, for those joining for the first time, I always offer the chat option. This is a webinar style learning lesson, anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes for each lesson. And then in the chat, I will answer the question as they're relevant. So if I need to pause in the moment and answer your question, then I'm happy to do it. Otherwise, I'll wait until the very end. The lesson will take around 20 minutes, and then I'll spend the remaining 10 minutes, up to 10 minutes, answering any questions that you have in the chat. Hi, Chris. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'm proud of you as well. Thanks so much for joining. Any questions or comments? I know that you have a lot of knowledge as well. So anything you want to share, feel free to do that in the chat. These videos are archived, so they're available on my YouTube channel, and they're also housed here on LinkedIn. So you can feel free to share those or come back and revisit them as often as you need. Hi, Tasnimood. Nice to see you. Doing well. Thank you. I'm happy that you've joined today. Again, any questions that you have? Thanks so much. So again, the format, 20 minutes of lesson, up to 10 minutes of chat and questions for Q&A. So go ahead and put those in the chat as you see appropriate. Also, feel free to share where you're joining from. It's really cool with LinkedIn and these lessons. We get people from all around the world. I'm joining today from my studio here in my home in New York City, specifically in Queens. The topic of giving and receiving constructive feedback is framed specifically today in the context of public speaking. I've been teaching public speaking for over a decade now, closer to about 15 years at this point. And these are tips that I've developed working with both my students in the classroom, but also with clients through my coaching work. And what I've learned with these tips for giving and receiving constructive feedback, there's a lot of different popular techniques that people use, like the sandwich method that I'm sure that you've heard, where you sandwich any criticism between two compliments. That's not the specific tip that I'm going to give. Instead, what I like to go and do, hi, Brandon, happy to see you. Thanks for joining from Ohio. What I'm going to do is go a little bit deeper, because that's what I do with my work with Right Brain Journeys, to go deeper to the underlying principles, theories as to why we should be giving feedback in this way, but also then how we can prepare ourselves to receive it. And that's really my favorite part of this lesson, which I'll get into in just a moment. I like it because, hey, Gina, I like it because when we get in the right mindset to receive that feedback, it empowers us, which is one of the pillars of my work, is to educate, empower, and inspire. So no matter what type of feedback comes our way, whether the intent is to be constructive or, unfortunately, sometimes the intent seems to be destructive and people are just trying to hurt us. No matter what's coming at us, when I give you some of these tips for how to receive the feedback constructively, it'll empower you to make it constructive for yourself, to go beyond the surface to see the deeper insights that are involved. So let's go ahead and do that. What you're going to see today, as I do for all of my lessons, I do a style of public speaking that I teach called extemporaneous style, which means that I do have notes that's in outline format. So you'll see me looking down here at my iPad, which is off the screen, so I can keep on track with the points I want to make. But extemporaneous style, as I said, I teach this with my students and clients, allows you really to have a structured conversation. So I'm not scripted word for word. I can look at the camera and make eye contact with you, which is essential for public speaking. Where I want to get started with for today is breaking that term, constructive feedback, breaking it down into the fundamental definition so that we're all on the same page. How I define constructive is providing detailed information about what and why, with the intention of helping the person to improve. So there's two aspects for how I define constructive. There's the content aspect, where you're commenting on what, something specific, and why does it matter? And then the second is the intention behind it, the energy or the emotion. You're doing it with the spirit of wanting to help the person to improve. That's what makes it constructive in my definition. And feedback are specific messages. These are verbal and nonverbal that indicate whether or not the sender and the receiver are on the same page about the message. And feedback is an important part of the communication process because we separate things into fact and interpretation, which is another lesson I've done in the past that you can go and look up. But where this matters is that a lot of us live our lives in our interpretations, and meaning we witness certain facts, we see certain things, and then we tell a story about it. And that story is filtered through our perceptions of who we are, and that includes our biases. And then that story becomes our reality. So what feedback allows us to do is to see whether or not the stories that each of us is telling, whether or not those are aligned or in completely separate directions. So constructive and feedback. That's the theme for today. Something else that I want us to be aware of is how feedback is a loop, meaning it's constantly being sent between the sender of the message, or in this case, the speaker for public speaking, and the receiver or the audience. So the speaker and the receiver. A good speaker is monitoring the audience for feedback. That feedback is usually nonverbal. We're looking for eye contact. We're looking for body posture. We're looking for any facial expressions which show interest or disinterest or confusion. Sometimes it'll be verbal where we're asked, so everyone gets that? Yes, makes sense, yes. And then we're scanning the room for head nods. Maybe someone will actually say out loud, yes or no. So that loop comes through. But the audience is also scanning the speaker for feedback as well. They're not just scanning the speaker for the actual message. They're gaining feedback from the speaker. Are they seeing that I'm confused? Is there a point where they're going to pause where I have a question? So they're scanning beyond just the actual content of the speech to see whether or not the deeper communication is being perceived and picked up upon by the speaker. So it's always a loop. And to be helpful, this feedback, which is always present, it needs to be constructive, which is why we're bringing this up today. So let's get into what makes it constructive. For it to be constructive, again, it needs to go back to two elements. It needs to be the content, it needs to be the energy. So we need to talk about what and why, and we want it to be in a way that is framed with the intent to be helpful for improvement. So we could offer in a public speaking situation some feedback to a speaker from the audience, if we're the audience member. We could say something like, your eye contact was excellent. So the what part is your eye contact. We're specifically commenting on that. And the why part was because you held it consistently for 2 or 3 seconds with each person in the audience. Or because I felt very much included. It felt like you were speaking directly to me. So we commented on something specific, eye contact, and then we gave them the why, the because you held it for 2 to 3 seconds with each person, or because you made me feel connected with you. I felt engaged and involved through the eye contact. Much more helpful. That feedback's much more helpful. Why? Because over the years, again, with working with people, a lot of times the audience will just give very general feedback. And the general feedback will be something like, loved your speech, great. Yes, we love to hear compliments like that. It can make us feel good, but even though it's really nice, it's not helpful because I don't know what I did, anything specific that mattered to you. And that's why I mean this constructive feedback, because it's actionable. If I did a great job with something, I need to know that from your perspective so that I can keep doing that in the future and be aware of why it was helpful to you. So if there's room for improvement, right, because not all feedback is going to be compliments, sometimes the feedback that's most helpful is going to be a critique. I like to use the word critique instead of criticism simply because criticism tends to have a more negative connotation, and some of us have been criticized a lot in our past and therefore may be adverse to receiving criticism because we feel it's a bad thing. So by calling it and reframing it as a critique, my hope is that you will be more open-minded to this room for improvement. So maybe something like this, for this constructive critique. Your voice was difficult to hear. That's something specific, right? That's the what. I'm commenting on your voice. The why, You should increase your volume so that the audience can listen to you better. In other words, I want you to speak louder because I actually want to listen to you, and I can't hear what you're saying and receive the content unless I can hear it. So I need you to speak louder for me to hear it. So again, breaking that down into two parts, it's going to be the what, in this case, it's the voice, and the why is going to be so that the audience can listen to you better. We want to hear what you have to say. So that's an example of making criticism constructive, whether it is going to be a constructive compliment. I loved it. Why? Here's why. Or there really is room for improvement. It would be better for the next time if you would, and then give me something specific. Now let's dig into this idea of intent. So when you're offering criticism, what is the intent? Is the intent to be helpful, or is it to be destructive? And if your intent is to be destructive, my question becomes why? What's the point? What's it doing for you psychologically, emotionally, to want to tear somebody else down? That is really deep insight for yourself. So before you open your mouth and offer that destructive feedback, because once you put it out there, what goes around comes around, you're going to recycle that negative energy back to yourself. But if the thought to offer it comes up in your head, that's the chance for you to pause and practice emotional intelligence. And is to ask yourself, what's the point? Why would I want to offer that destructive feedback instead of constructive? So perhaps you're jealous of that person. Jealousy and envy, similar. They're not exactly the same things, but they're in the same family of emotions. My general conclusion working with clients over the years when we're feeling envy or jealousy, a lot of the times that's pinpointing that that person has something that you want that you believe that you don't deserve or you can't have yourself. So it's really the belief of not having it by yourself, that you don't deserve it or you can't have it. That's really where the negativities come. And so the intent of being hurtful for that person is really because you're sad for yourself. So that gives you deep insight. Again, I'm not wanting you to share that destructive intent, but I want you to use it to pinpoint deeper for yourself, deeper insights. Let me pause for a moment. I see a couple comments here. Thank you to the LinkedIn user here. Curious rather than, yes, curiosity. Yeah, curiosity is the hallmark of an educated person because we keep asking why. It's like being an eternal 2-year-old. Why? So we educate ourselves when we're a curious person because it gives us the motivation to go and see deeper beyond what surface level stuff is available to us. Hey, Sarah, good to see you here. Happy that you joined today. So when you're wanting to offer constructive criticism, again, I just took a lot of time to talk about destructive critiques, but when you're looking at giving constructive criticism or constructive critiques, constructive compliments, the intent is to be helpful towards someone. You're wanting to see them improve. So what are the tips here for giving constructive? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bullet points that I'll just put down. P.S. All this is going to be in my May newsletter, which will go out within the first week of May. So if you haven't subscribed to that, please do that. You'll find it on my site here. It's at the top of the featured section of my profile on LinkedIn. It's called Conscious Communication is the newsletter. So you'll be able to get these tips written and then watch the replay of the video there as well. But tips for offering constructive feedback. Begin to remind yourself that the intent, this is the first step, the intent is to be helpful. So meaning that's going to say something in a way that is going to be more well received by the person that you're offering the feedback. So in this case, it's the audience offering it to the speaker. You're not just going to say it in words that are pleasing to yourself. You're going to say it in a way that their speaker can receive it. So it's helpful to them. The second tip of these 5 for constructive feedback, you want to avoid subjective evaluations. Subjective means that what is good or bad, what's better or worse, is really dependent on the person, right? Like what's good pizza really depends on each person's definition of what good is. So if you just say good or bad, better, worse, that's too subjective. Use more objective words. So to do that, the third tip is instead focus on action verbs. Increase, decrease, step forward, turn towards. The fourth one then is to state what you are commenting on. For example, eye contact, attire, gestures, voice, posture. And then finally, the why. Why are you commenting on it? And usually this includes the words because. Increase eye contact with the left side of the room because you did not make eye contact with me during the speech. So that's putting in all those 5 steps together in a specific example. Increase eye contact with the left side of the room because you did not make eye contact with me during the speech. Doing that is going to provide feedback that is constructive for the speaker. Let's go ahead and flip it to the other side. This is what I said is one of my most favorite parts about this, because this is really the empowerment piece. And it's how do we prepare ourselves, for example, as the speaker, to receive the constructive feedback, whether it's a constructive compliment, which might seem easier to receive, but I'm going to tell you something here that could be very surprising about compliments, and then the constructive critiques. I point this out for anyone who puts themselves in a leadership position or position of visibility. So if you stand up in front of the room, you're in a position of visibility. Leaders always put ourselves in front of this room, and I call us essentially lighthouses. So when we're a lighthouse on top of the hill, yes, we are the person leading everything. We're the shining light for all the ships to see, right? We're bringing them in, we're providing the point to guide everyone. So that's the nice side of being a lighthouse. However, if the lighthouse is under attack, we're also sticking right out there with no protection and no cover. So something that leaders, that when I work with them, that I prepare them for, is if you're going to be in a leadership position, you're going to get praise and you're also going to get criticism. So you're going to have people following you and loving the things that you offer, and you're going to have people attacking you as well. So the way to help prepare yourself for the more negative side of it, which is the attack piece, is to understand how to recycle, or really the better word is transform that energy, that attack energy, into something that is constructive for you. So they can throw it out negatively, but you have the knowledge and the power to recycle that or transform it into something beneficial. And here's how you do that. So this is how can you receive constructive feedback. So I've worked with more than one person over the years who's initially struggled to accept both compliments and critiques until we've learned to transform it through a mindset shift. This is a quote that I'm going to share. So I'll be reading this directly so I get it right. This is from HBR, Harvard Business Review. And the title is, Do Compliments Make You Cringe? Here's Why. I shared this a few weeks ago on my LinkedIn profile, so you may have seen this if you follow the stuff that I do regularly. Again, from Harvard Business Review, do compliments make you cringe? Here's why. I'm quoting. The fear is, if I allow myself to let in a compliment and feel good about it and end up disappointing others or myself in the future, I risk taking a bigger bite of my self-esteem. I risk taking a bigger bite out of my self-esteem. All of this is to say, many of us respond awkwardly to compliments as an unconscious act of self-protection. Unfortunately, this unconscious self-protection often robs us of human connection. It keeps us from letting in the kind words and gratitude of others. So we end up being our own roadblock, some of us, through an unconscious pattern of self-protection, where you would think you'd want to let in the good stuff. Some of us really struggle to let in the good stuff. And this Harvard Business Review offers an insight that could explain why, if you also struggle with this, what's at the root cause of it. Because once we know the root cause, we can work on cleaning that up and developing more helpful patterns of behaviors. When the feedback is especially challenging, could be for sensitive people. I've also recently posted on my LinkedIn page around a book that I've been reading that I've loved and highly recommend. It's called Sensitive. It's got a cover, it's over on my bookshelf, otherwise I'd reach over and get it. It's got a jacket cover that's multicolored. It's got some blues and some greens and some yellows and some reds on it. Sensitive by Jen Grammerman and Andrew Solo, looks like, if I'm reading the jacket cover properly. Anyway, this is from their work, and the article was written up in the Greater Good Science Center, which is a wonderful online resource, and it's called The Superpowers of Sensitive People is the article. So they say around 30% of the population are sensitive people. And here's what we mean by that term. And this is why once I read this definition, you understand that if you are also among the 30%, as I am, why feedback might be even more challenging for you. So sensitive people are people who, absorb more sensory information, often unconsciously, think more deeply, and find more interconnections among disparate things than less sensitive people typically do. So, in other words, sensitive people, our five senses are more acutely calibrated. We literally just pick up more sensory information in the world. There's all kind of information coming through our brains, and we're processing all that. It's a lot that comes through. So when the feedback comes in, it just doesn't come in and wash off our backs. We absorb it, we think about it, and we process it. So it can impact us even more deeply. Here are some tips to help then with receiving feedback, whether its intent is to be constructive or destructive. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these as well. Actually, 5, 7, excuse me, there are 7 of these. So the first one is to begin with an open mind so you can receive it. And what I mean by that is beginning with an open mind is that you're going to suspend the story that you've told yourself. You may not be able to stop the story, right? So we've witnessed something, our brains have turned all those facts or data into a story. And now what I'm asking you to do is to exercise some emotional intelligence and to work through that and separate your observation skills from the story that you just told. Meaning, you know what your story is. And now you're going to watch it from the side and be open to another story being told. The second one, temporarily suspend your feelings about how you think you did and let the feedback tell the story. So that's what we're doing with the open mind. The first part of step 1 is not living in the story, but observing your own story. The second tip is, as you're observing your own story, you're listening to the story being told by the other person. So a non-public speaking example would be, if I wore this shirt today because I really like this shirt, I like the color, I like the style. So that's my story about this shirt. If somebody else says, I hate your shirt, that's their story. It's telling me a story that maybe they don't like long sleeves, maybe they don't like this kind of material, maybe they don't like these zip up style sweaters, maybe they don't like this color. There's a story coming from them, and trying to temporarily suspend my feelings and my story will allow me to not judge their story as being right or wrong. They have bad taste, they have good taste, and just receive their story. That's what I'm talking about with step 2. Step 3, if you encounter feedback that has a destructive intent, the person is trying to hurt you, actually consider tossing it aside, realizing that there's a good chance that they don't have your best interests at heart. So when I say toss it aside, if someone doesn't like the shirt, doesn't mean I'm never going to wear the shirt again. If I like it and I understand why I like it and I think it's effective to convey the brand and the image that I'm trying to have for the work that I do, then I'm going to keep it. So the intent is what I'm throwing away, not necessarily their perspective. I understand that not everyone's going to have the same taste, and yet I'm still making a decision that I believe is in the best interest of the overall work that I'm trying to do. The fourth one, identify what the feedback is commenting on. So sometimes people just offer feedback that's incomplete, meaning they're going to say things like, that was great, or I didn't like it, but they're not going to give you specific aspects. So your work is to dig into it. Where was that person sitting in the audience? Why might they have liked it? What do I know about them? So if you know any of the information, then you may be able to go deeper into it. The fifth one, understand why the audience member is commenting on it. So that goes back to some of the idea of the feedback and understanding where they're sitting at in the audience. You're digging into why, what matters to them. The sixth one, figure out how you can improve for the next presentation. So I find this the most helpful because it automatically puts you into an action role. You're going to move out of just receiving feedback and instead already thinking about improvement. This goes to Carol Dweck's work, Dr. Dweck's work on the growth mindset. That way, whether it's positive or more negative feedback, whether it's a constructive compliment or it's a constructive critique, you're really using that feedback in a way that's going to move you forward. It's about growth and doing it better the next time. And that can put us in a better mindset because now that feedback has a positive point, no matter whether, again, it's made to be a compliment or a critique. The last one, this one can be the most challenging step, but can you, no matter the type of feedback, can you actually be thankful for it? Can you express gratitude for it? Why? Well, the gratitude is going to put you in a more positive, energetic state. The gratitude itself is going to help transform the way you feel about that and set you up with a better mindset to be able to move forward. So ending with gratitude, that's often one that we have to work towards. So if you can move right now through the top 6 steps, then perhaps it's a growth mindset in and of itself for the last one, the 7th. Okay, we're coming to the end of the lesson here. We have up to 6 minutes. If you have any specific questions or comments that you wanted, if you had constructive compliments or constructive critiques that you would offer, I'm more than welcome to look at those for ways that I can continue to make this most valuable for the people who most enjoy these learning lessons. Feel free to ask questions or to offer those. While I'm waiting to see if any messages pop in, I want to invite you for ways that you can continue to learn with me. I've already mentioned about my monthly newsletter called Conscious Communication. And for those that may be joining a little bit late, what I said was basically the transcript for this is going to be my monthly newsletter for the month of May, which will go out within the first week of May. So you'll find that newsletter on my LinkedIn profile at the top with the featured items. It's called Conscious Communication. You can subscribe, and each month they go out within the first week of the month. Each month they'll go directly to the email that you have associated with LinkedIn, whatever you signed up with for LinkedIn. I also offer a communication and public speaking community here on LinkedIn. It's a group for public speaking. You'll also find that on my page that you can join. I have a book on Amazon called From Student to Professional, an Essential Communication Soft Skills Guide. And then I offer also one-on-one coaching. We can do that virtually. And I also offer learning lessons for organizations as well. So if you want to bring this into your company, I am in the New York City area, so it's really convenient for New York-based businesses. But I also offer a bunch of virtual options as well. And the last thing I do is speaking engagements. So everything communication is what I talk about. I'm happy to talk with you about that option as well. Okay, I'm monitoring the chat. I don't see any questions popping in. So I'll wait just another moment here to see if there is anything. Otherwise, I want to thank you all for joining today, and we'll do this again next month. All right, Sarah, may you repeat the name of the sensitive book by the authors? Yes, the sensitive book, actually, let me go ahead and turn my camera off for a moment. I'm going to lean over to my bookshelf and get it. Hold on a second. I'll be with you in just a moment. This way I can hold it up for you. Here it is. So it's called Sensitive, the hidden power of the highly sensitive person in a loud, fast, too much world by Jen Grenenman and Andrew Solo. I'm also planning for the month of June, Sarah. I've read a bunch of really good books this year. So I'm going to put together for my June newsletter, I'm going to put together my top list of books and brief descriptions so you'll be able to see them. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for joining. Again, I appreciate it, and follow or subscribe to my monthly newsletter, Conscious Communication. Have a great Friday. Bye-bye.